Welcome to this, our 6th Barnet Question Time event, where you've got the chance to put your questions to members of the Cabinet. I'm Kath Shaw, I'm the Chief Executive of the Council, and I'll be your chair this evening. We'll be online until about 8:30, and we'll take our last question about 5 minutes before the end of the session. The event is being recorded and it will be made public, so please don't include any confidential or personal information, and we won't deal with any specific casework for that reason. I hope lots of you are familiar with Microsoft Teams by now, but if you're not, just a few housekeeping points. Unless you're asking a question, could you please make sure that you're on mute? There should be a microphone icon at the top right hand corner of your screen if you're on a laptop or an iPad, which should have a line through it. If you're on a phone, it might be in a different place, but if you look for that microphone icon. If you don't want to be seen on the recording, you can make sure your camera's off by clicking on that camera icon until it's got a line through it. We will be sharing some written information in relation to the answers in the chat bar, and you can put questions and comments in the chat bar. Again, to access it, just please click on the bubble icon, and then hopefully you will be able to see the chat. I do want to make sure that the chat stays civil and polite. I think in previous sessions, people have felt a little freer to be uncivil in the chat than they would have been face to face. I think that's a sign of our social media age. If you could keep it polite, that would be very welcome. We do have a lot of people on the call, so if I can ask you to just ask one short question so that we can get through as many questions as possible. Ideally, if you want to ask a question, use the raise hand option at the top of the screen, and I'll prioritise those people raising their hands. But we will try and get through some of the questions asked in the chat as well. Although please, as I say, do remember not to ask any personal or casework questions. If you do ask questions in the chat, I'll periodically go to Tristan, our moderator, who'll read out some of those chat questions. If you like a question that someone else has asked, if you give it a thumbs up, we'll prioritise those questions with the most thumbs up. And if we don't get to your question, you can email us at barnetquestiontime@barnet.gov.uk, which is an address that we'll put in the chat, and the relevant Cabinet member will respond to you directly. This is a session to ask questions about the work of the Council and the Borough. As I've said before, please don't ask us personal or casework questions. Cabinet members won't discuss individual casework in this session. If you've got a complaint about a council or a service, then we will post information in the chat on how to make a complaint. But this really isn't a forum for complaints. And I'm sure you will all be very polite, but in the unlikely event if anyone is abusive, offensive or disruptive, we do reserve the right to either mute you or remove you from the meeting. Okay, with all of that out of the way, I would like to hand over to Councillor Barry Rawlings to give a welcome.
Thank you, Kath. And we do welcome you here. As Kath said, this is since being elected in May 2022, so just over 3 years ago. This is our 6th question time, but we've also had a question time specifically for young people. We have a business plan. You can see on our logo that it concentrates on the plan for Barnet, which has a vision for caring for people, places and the planet. But we know to achieve this, we need a different relationship with the people in Barnet. And so we want to be as open as we can, which is why we regularly hold this question time. There are other ways, by the way, and it's important to know. So we have a public question time at all full council meetings. We allow deputations on specific issues of both full council and cabinet member. And we have briefings specifically for businesses, business breakfasts and so on. So we are keeping the session open to questions on all council related issues and themes. But to reiterate, we cannot deal with an individual casework or a named person in that way. So what I do, first of all, in case you don't know them, is let the cabinet members introduce themselves. If I start on my right. Sarah.
I'm Councillor Ross Houston, and I'm the cabinet member for Homes and Regeneration.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Sarah Conway. I cover community safety, community cohesion, and ending violence against women and girls.
Well, hello, I'm Councillor Alan Schneiderman. I'm the Cabinet Member for Environment and Climate Change, which covers our sustainability work and our street scene and other services.
Hello and welcome to the session. I am Councillor Zara Begg and my portfolio is equalities, reducing poverty and voluntary and community sectors.
Hello, I'm Em Clark. I'm Cabinet Member for Culture, Leisure, Arts and Sport.
Hello, I'm Councillor Pauline Coakley-Webb and I'm Cabinet Member for Family Friendly Barnet, which is everything to do with children, young people, care leavers and education.
I'm Councillor Alison Moore. My portfolio is adult social care and health, which includes public health.
And I'm Councillor Simon Radford. I am Cabinet Member for Financial Sustainability and for East Barnet Ward. The leader kindly asked me to say a few words because it's my first question time and I'm new in post. A bit about who I am and a bit about the challenge of the budget at the moment. So I wanted to start with saying a few words about that because I'm sure a lot of you, like us, are wondering about where we stand financially and what the plan is to keep improving it. I come to this role with a bit of background in finance. I started out at Deloitte. Spent some time doing an investment advisory firm and now work for a think tank that deals with financial policy. I previously served as chair of pension committee where we moved the pension fund from deficit to surplus and was pleased to take on this role a few months ago as cabinet member for finance. Before I say sort of what we're doing, it's important to have a sense of, I guess, the context in which we find ourselves in. So in 2022, we inherited a budget that'd been cut in half in real terms from 2010, and we had perilously low reserves. Essentially, we were left with a bare cupboard. We, of course, were in the middle of a cost of living crisis, much of which still persists, but was particularly acute when we came in. And that's also meant that there's been a jump in demand for social care, for temporary accommodation costs, and other services which are our legal duty to provide. And then to add insult to injury, perhaps, in September 2022, you might all sadly remember Liz Truss, who delivered the fiscal event, or I think the leader calls it the farcical event, which led to a massive jump in gilt yields. And we're still dealing with gilt yields that are percentages higher than they were before she made those announcements. So our cost of borrowing has gone up massively, and when we have no reserves and we have to borrow, that's a real expense. Equally, inflation has shot up, exacerbated by the war in Ukraine, which also means that our cost of delivering services, the cost to fill one pothole has gone up, for example, a great deal, despite the fact the government has obviously given us a lot of extra money dedicated to that, which is really great news. So what have we done in that context? We haven't thrown our hands up. We've really sort of had a plan to try and tackle the problem that we faced. The first is making year-on-year efficiency savings. How can we deliver the same or better services for lower costs? Part of that, as well as you might have seen, we had a successful bid for EFS funding, which is a loan from the government, which allows us to bridge to a new, more sustainable future while we pivot towards a lower cost council. All 6 councils who have claimed that money are in Outer London, and that's potentially no surprise. We all suffer from the same structural issues that I outlined before. And so despite being now a very well-run council, we have, the 6 Outer London councils have 15% lower funding per capita per resident than the average across England. And in Barnet, that's even worse, actually, it's 20%. So we're making the case to the government for fairer funding, and that's one way that we're trying to use our influence to tackle the issue. The other is we started a plan for savings to get us to sustainability, and that includes £23 million this year, which we're on track to deliver, I'm really pleased to say. And that's been through a lot of blood, sweat and tears and hard decisions, but we're delivering them, and that's important. And then we've made real changes in how the council is governed. I think you'll all be familiar with scandals in years past before we came into office around capita, around not having the right pension data, around lots of other things. It's important that we got the governance and checks and balances and transparency right. So we've developed an early warning system, so we're tracking data in real time. We're not just relying on being told what the weather is 8 months after the storm. We're making sure we're tracking our costs in real time. We're escalating issues as soon as we see that in the data. We have daily spending review panels, and that's really got a grip on our day-to-day spending. And we're reviewing the capital programme to make sure we're spending what we can afford and not just maybe what we'd like to spend. We have to live within our means, and this is what's allowing us to do that. And finally, we're making sure we're being very careful in how we manage our cash, because solvency and liquidity are both important things. We need to make sure we're conserving cash so that we're not borrowing unnecessarily. And that means, we are making sure that we are following up on the bills that are owed to us, and then make sure that we're managing the bills which we owe to others as well. So that talks a bit about capital, it talks a bit about what we're doing to improve services, but we also wanted an independent set of eyes to help us do that. We brought in an improvement partner called People2, who have worked across a number of different councils to bring some of the best practice they've seen from elsewhere to tell us about how we can get up to the highest benchmark they've seen elsewhere. They can bring in an idea of what best practice truly is, so we can move towards that as quickly as possible, and they'll be reporting to that. But the good news is that getting a grip on these things has started really to bear fruit. We've seen that in the numbers that are coming through. And rather than sort of carrying on the descent that we found, we've been able to bottom out, start to turn around some of these important numbers so that we can deliver more of the services that matter to you as the residents. So I wanted to start off with a bit of that scene setting, a bit of that picture, because I know that's top of mind. We can't do all of the things which we want to do here on this bench unless we have the finances to allow us to do it. So I wanted to start off by saying thank you for putting your trust in me and us. Every pound which we spend is our collective pounds. We need to make sure it's delivering the best value for money possible. And I'm happy to answer any further questions, of course, that you have.
Thank you, Councillor Radford. Okay, so I'm going to move to questions from the audience. It's lovely to see a lot of familiar faces. I think there are also a large number of new faces on the call. As it is our 6th question time, and many of you have had chances to ask questions in the past, I was going to ask if anyone who hasn't joined the call before or who hasn't asked a question before wanted to go first with their questions. And I think Marilyn Lee has her hand up, but I think it was quite a specific question, and Councillor Houston has answered it in the chat. But Marilyn, did you want to come in with your question? Marilyn, you're on mute at the moment, I believe. Yeah. Oh,
you should be able to hear me now. As I said in the chat, because I wasn't sure whether I'd get a chance to speak, it's mainly about Nether Street that has collapsed behind number 2 Courthouse Road. This has been an ongoing thing for 2 years now, and all the neighbours all around here are concerned about what's going on, because it's all been cordoned off and it's quite dangerous, and it's basically collapsing, and there's no sign of any sort of a conclusion to this. So that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I did a brief answer in the chat, Marilyn. As our Chief Exec can confirm, I have raised this issue at a very senior level within the council because she's aware of it. There is an update. Because it involves residents, I don't want to go into any specific details in a public forum like this, but I will update the Residents Association. I actually had an update on this today, so it is long overdue being fixed. You're completely right about that. And it's been it's very frustrating that it's taken so long.
Okay, thank you. I think the next question is from Nora Punasami, and I should apologise to everyone in advance if I mispronounce some names. I hope I got that broadly right, Nora.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I just had a question about EHCPs. It's a general question around funding to schools. So I have been told that schools have to find half the funding that is awarded to a child who has met the criteria for an EHCP. So the child is awarded funding, and then half of the funding has to come from a SEND budget from the school. Is that correct, or is that incorrect?
Councillor Coakley, where does that one
Hi, thank you for the question. Probably it'd be a good idea as well if offline you email me so I can give you a more rounded answer, which will really just address to your child, which I need more details. Yes, there is, when the EHCP is done, then the funding comes partly both ways, but it depends on what the EHCP says as to who does what. So until I can verify what the EHCP, presumably for your child, says, and what the actual educational provision is, then I can look into that more for you. And what I can tell you is that the budget and the number of EHCPs that we get is certainly stretched. We certainly do the EHCPs within the regulated time frame of the number of weeks that it says we have to do it in, which is unusual. A lot of boroughs don't. But I do know the problem is that once the EHCP comes into place, difficulty often is finding the right people and the right therapists to fulfill the requirements of what the EHCP says is needed. But yeah, please feel free to get in touch with me, email me directly, and then we can look more clearly into your case and more clear into the details.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, I'm going to go to Ian Wood now.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect timing that it's tonight. I noticed today that sales cabins have been installed at the Great North Leisure Park in Finchley for the proposal from Regal that's going to the Strategic Planning Committee. Is this an indication that the development will be approved? Because it seemed odd to sell flats that have not been giving planning approval.
Hey, not at all. I mean, obviously Regal own that site, so we have no control over what they do. It's their land. No, not at all. I mean, it'll have to go through planning and be considered by the planning committee. You know, and that's absolutely, you know, they're completely unrelated. Yeah. I mean, why Regal? Obviously Regal. I think it's no secret that Regal have applied for permission to build residential on that site. So, but they're the site owners. You would have to ask Regal why they've put, you know, there's no, as I say, it will go to planning in due course and be considered in the normal way.
Is it sort of normal behaviour? Because I've only lived in the borough for a few years, so I've not sort of experienced a large scale development like this. Is it normal that things are sold before approval's granted?
No, they can't be.
No.
But,
okay.
Just to let you know, there is a plan, what's called the teardrop, in a small part of the leisure park. There's already planning permission for Regal to build one block in a corner away from that. So it may be for that reason. Yeah, that teardrop was agreed a couple of years ago. But
okay.
no, if they don't get planning permission, they don't get planning permission. Yeah. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, so there may be.
I'll ask Regal, Ian, whether or not it's in relation to that site, because it's news to me. I've not been down there today, so I haven't seen any.
Yeah, they're still labelled with previous.
I'm going to ask you not to do follow-ups if that's okay, because what we've found is that we tend to fill up our time with people's first questions. If there's time at the end, I will of course come back to you. But for now, I'm going to hand across to Salim Sabri. Sorry, Salim.
Evening, Salim Sabri, I'm chair of the West Finchley Residents Association. We have a neighbourhood plan. I think we're the only one in Barnet, and it's a question about how we're going to protect our locally listed heritage. Because we have a site in our neighbourhood, 200 Nether Street, that seems to be left to rack and ruin. How can it be protected?
Yeah, I mean a good question. So I mean the neighbourhood ban is was the first in Barnet, is an important step in relation to giving a layer of planning protection for an area, and I think the Residents Association did a wonderful job in putting that in place. I think the site you referred to, I'm familiar with. It is private property, and it's actually quite difficult for councils to intervene with private property. But what we will do is we'll raise it again and see if there's anything that we can do. Because if the site is deteriorating further, then we need to look at the options there. As you say, that site's been vacant for a long time now.
Thank you, Councillor Houston. I'm going to go on to Jez Sims.
Good evening, panel. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, evening, Jez.
Fine. A deterrent is only effective as the sum of its parts. And from April 24 through to March 25, there were 8,796 reported fly tipping incidents in Barnet. Is it not time, therefore, to renew the council's penalties by significantly raising and/or revising them?
Mr. Schneiderman?
Hi, evening, Jess. Good to see you.
Hi.
I think well, we put a lot more resourcing into actually catching fly tippers. So as well as clearing them up, we send out in lots of areas an enforcement team along with the street scene team, so that we can make sure that that evidence is actually collected before it's cleared away. And as a result, we are now, seeing more prosecutions and more fines. So I think that's the priority. We actually need to catch people, and we are catching more people now through that activity and through extra use of CCTV cameras. But yeah, I mean, going forwards, we will look at the fine levels again, but our priority at the moment is making sure that we try and catch as many people as possible, and that's the biggest deterrent. But yeah, going forwards, we will look at the actual levels of fines.
And the thing, sorry to say it's true, one thing that has changed is a lot more work in CCTV cameras, but actually having mobile CCTV that can be used at particular fly tipping spots. It's a disgrace what people, and we've got to prosecute them hard. So I agree with you totally, James. These things take time. We're a very big borough, and if you've got 3 or 4 mobile cameras, but you've got thousands of square meters, But the important thing is they are reported and are reported quickly, because then we can look at some trend data and use the mobile camera to try and catch the perpetrators.
Thank you.
Leader. I've got the slightly mysterious AB now. If you want to come in, maybe give your name as well.
Let's see.
AB. That's how you're showing on my screen. You're second with your hand up.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. I don't know why it's AB, but
Go for it anyway.
Well, yes. Okay. Just a couple of questions. Pick up on the financial report. It seemed to me pretty upbeat, and that you are getting a grip on a very complex and complicated way of running a borough. And I see that you've got a 3-year plan in place, and you're 3/4 of the way through it. Are you starting to think about the next 3-year plan? And the second bit of the question really is, how much does government policy strategy impact on how you proceed with your strategic thinking? That's one question, or 2 questions.
Happy to start and then hand over to the leader. So I think we budget many years in advance, and I think that's an important part of financial prudence. So in that sense, we're always one thing though, which I did want to challenge you on, is I didn't want to seem too upbeat. I think the point is that we're, you have to be, I guess when you're cabinet member for finance, your job is to scowl and say everything is, desperate and all the rest of it. And I do that very well. So I'm upbeat that we've got the right governance in place, that everyone around the table here knows the challenge that we've set ourselves. But it's a day by day, week by week, permanent slog to make sure that we keep up the momentum and we're doing what we need to do. You might not think of it to look at me, but I've lost a bit of weight recently, and I know you can't just do 1 week of a diet. You've got to, it's a permanent thing you have to do. So I want to make clear that's the attitude as well that we're taking towards our finances. So while I'm upbeat that we're on the right course, there's a lot of hard work and hard decisions still to go. In terms of the sort of the strategic piece, yes, I mean what we're trying to do as well is we're trying to move from we were previously sort of, I think, mopping up a lot of the symptoms. We were treating the people who were potentially already had quite a lot of their needs developed. What we're trying to do is how do we move more towards prevention, and how even to, if at some point prediction before we can do prevention. And that's a major part of how we start to tackle the demand for a lot of our services. And as I said before, a lot of them is our legal duty to provide. So the more that we can help people before they come into these services, so that their needs don't escalate, the more financially sustainable we're going to be in the long term. So I've been working with colleagues here to think about how do we do that agenda in their area of expertise and in their service areas. And that's an important part of the strategy, as well as budgeting realistically, but not with heroic assumptions, but with very sober-minded assumptions. No one necessarily thought Liberation Day and the trade, Trump's trade tariffs were going to happen. But so that's why you need to be quite conservative, precautionary when it comes to forecasting, and then make sure you're driving really hard to try and achieve it while being very realistic about the assumptions you're making. So hopefully that goes some way, I hope, to answer the question.
We've been in a slightly better position after Wednesday. On Wednesday, we've got the public spending review being announced, which will give it won't say how much Barnet will get, but it will say how much local government will be getting. We are expecting the funding formula to be agreed, that it'll be a 3-year formula, so we can plan better. But the real thing is looking for win-wins. I'll give you a couple of quick examples. Children's placement's very expensive. I think we've got 6 children whose total cost is like 1.8 million a year because of the expensive placements. We bought a couple of houses. They will become children's homes that we will run. That will save some money. And taking the second question about EHCPs, in the last couple of years, there's been a 40% increase in Barnet and the number of EHCPs for reception, 4 and 5-year-olds. Now that does involve a cost, but it also means that we can intervene early, and hopefully by doing that preventative work with 4 and 5-year-olds, it stops that money going up and becoming more expensive. So it's acting early, sticking to a plan so we know where we're going and what we want to do. From the government, we need some certainty over funding, which I'm hoping we'll get with a 3-year settlement. It won't be enough because it never is, but we can work our plan through, and with Simon and so on, make a real difference. And that's what we aim to do.
Thank you. Very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did say only one question each, but we haven't got lots and lots of hands. So you did suggest you had a second question. Did you want to ask that as well?
Me?
Yes, sorry, I don't know your name, maybe.
Okay, it was slightly different, but it's a segue from prevention and so forth. I am quite deeply concerned, and a lot of my Barnet co-residents are, at the, I suppose it's the implosion of the medical services at various clinics and GP surgeries. Is that something which you have any influence on, or they're accountable to you, or is it purely to the NHS? Because talking about prevention and forward planning, that's not happening. Doctors don't seem to be able to, after COVID-19, wishing to work except from home. It's very difficult to see a doctor or a nurse, and this is actually a very poor use of resources. I'm quite concerned about that, and it may not be within your remit, but it's just a question a lot of us would like to get a sense of how you feel about it.
Thank you. Councillor Moore, do you want to pick that up?
You're absolutely right that it's not GP surgeries are not under our direct control. They're commissioned by what's known as the ICB, the Integrated Care Board. However, we do work very closely with them, and I know that they've been doing a lot of work supporting many of our local. We've got more than 40 GP practices within Barnet, and there's been a lot of work going on to support both their IT capacity, their organisational capacity, and also supporting them in a range of different ways, depending on the constraints. You'll recognise that many of our GP practices are in very different premises. So there's lots of things that they're doing to help them modernise premises and work better. I think it's a challenging situation for everyone, and we do quite a lot of work both with them and through our voluntary and community sector, trying to support people and direct them to the best service for them. So, for example, recognising when you can go to a pharmacy, when you can go to the practice nurse. So there's a lot of work aimed at making sure that you can see a GP when you absolutely need a GP, but you also use all of the other allied health services that are about. And so it's a work in progress, but we are working as closely as we can, but it is an NHS responsibility ultimately.
Thank you for your answer.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I'm going to take the question from Nigel Howard, then I'm going to go to Tristan to pick up a couple of the questions from the chat, and then I'll come back to those with their hands up. And I think, as you've sort of assumed, but I haven't said it explicitly, those who've been before, if you now want to ask questions, then please do put your hands up too. So Nigel Howard.
You're on mute, mate, sorry. We all do it sometime.
Is that better?
That's better, thank you.
Thank you, good evening. Well, I was encouraged by being invited to this meeting. It's my first one as a resident, and I'd like to pick up on perhaps 2 points, if I may. The first point I'd like to introduce is what Mr. Radford, the gentleman I believe you are, talking about fiscal costings for the council, how you think it's all down to Liz Truss, how the terrible financial mess we're in. But what I think is rather disheartening for me about the cost of living crisis, which I don't think any of you have addressed so far, because perhaps you haven't been asked it, is the disproportionate amount it costs to park in the borough. So as an example, most borough parking charges are between 08:30, I think, and 5:30. And as an example, in Regent's Park Road, it's £1.63 to park for half an hour. I think it's half that cost to park in Watling Avenue. Yet on a Sunday in Golders Green Road, between the North Circular and I think it's Ravenscroft Avenue, you have parking charges going through to 5:30 on a Sunday. So how are you supposed to help people with the cost of living crisis when you penalise businesses and you want people to shop locally? Yet why is it you charge in one part of the borough to park on a Sunday and other parts of the borough you do not, and charge different parking prices? Could you please answer that question for me?
Yeah, thank you, Nigel. There are a range of parking charges across the borough because it depends on the particular circumstances in individual town centres. Golders Green is a very busy town centre on a Sunday. Therefore, the charging on a Sunday there encourages a turnover. And I've sat having a coffee in Golders Green High Road, and it's extremely busy on a Sunday with people coming and going. So I think, businesses in Golders Green Road do seem to be quite busy on a Sunday, but that's why it depends on each area is a bit different. Sunday, Golders Green has a very active high street, particularly on a Sunday.
Yeah, but you could argue, I don't know how long you've lived in the borough for, but maybe you haven't lived here as long as I have. But if you remember, before Brent Cross came to Barnet, Golders Green was seen as one of the jewels of the shopping streets in London. It collapsed when Brent Cross opened. And if you want to encourage people to go shopping locally and not shop online, perhaps you can be a little bit more helpful than what you are. And it still brings me back to my point, why it is where Watling Avenue is busy on a Sunday, Temple Fortune is busy on a Sunday, why it is certain parts of Golders Green are targeted with higher parking charges and on a Sunday when the other parts of the borough are not.
Well, I mean, some of this is historic. I mean, didn't want to take a guess of your age. I've lived in the borough about over 50 years. But yeah, like I say, some of it is historic, but on the whole, it is to try and take account of the circumstances in that area. So yeah, there are some other places that are also busy on a Sunday, but you cited Golders Green, and that is very, very busy on a Sunday. And if we didn't have those charges, I think you find people would park there, and the businesses would probably get less customers because you just wouldn't get that turnover. But these are things that we do look at, and we'll look at going forwards.
Well, thank you.
We're very keen to have thriving town centres, and
Thank you, Nigel. I did allow you one follow-up, so I'm going to move on now, if I may, to Tristan to ask a couple of questions from the chat, if there are any.
Sure. Okay, thank you. So we've had a few questions in the chat. The first question, Councillor Houston, you've answered in the chat, but I don't know if you would like to address it verbally, just in light of Labour's recent changes to the National Planning Policy Framework regarding the new definition of grey belt and the Mayor's reversal on greenbelt development. Could you clarify Barnet Council's short and long-term intentions regarding the use of greenbelt land, particularly in the context of the local plan's target to deliver 2,933 new homes annually over the next 15 years?
Well, there's not much really I can add to what I've said in the chat, which is that, you know, we're sticking to the manifesto pledge, but obviously the local plan is prepared under the current framework, so the housing target is based on the current the current supply that we anticipate under the current planning regime, which including the green belt restrictions and everything else. So, and obviously it's been through an 8-year process and inspector and everything else. So the assessment is those housing targets are deliverable with the existing local plan and the planning framework.
Thank you. Next question is for you, Leader.
Hello,
any follow-up on the termination of ex-Barnetoke Councillor Aman Akvi?
Can I ask people to just
the
make sure they're
council
on mute,
meeting,
please, because we can hear a bit of background noise. Thank you.
So, Leader, a question from Diki Chan. Any follow-up on the termination of ex-Barnetoke Councillor Aman Akvi for his false employment history? In particular, any investigations and audits being done to reveal if there are any frauds on the council's finance when he was the council finance chief?
Right, well, you're right that Councillor Akvi resigned, because that's the councillor. There has been no indication of any fraud. We have had a couple of highly publicised frauds from years ago and so on. And in fact, he actually helped bring to notice and deal with. What's happened, I can't particularly explain. It was a falsified. Like with any job, if you go for a job application and your information is wrong from an HR point of view, you leave it. Councillors do not get sacked in that way. It was his choice to resign, his choice to take the fall for us. We replaced him with Simon. There's absolutely no indication of frauds. You can never say never, but as a councillor, you don't actually you don't sign contracts in that way. You're not really involved in things that could involve fraud and so on. So I am totally confident there is no sign of anything like that.
Can I just add one thing? I just spent 2 hours with our independent auditors, Grant Thornton, the other day. So as well as the leader saying, you know, there's no access to actual, you know, as finance chief now, I don't have any access to any bank account that has Barnet Council's name on it. I can't do that. We set policy and we set strategy. And then obviously the officers in the council are the ones who execute that and have access to the financial systems to do that. So he wouldn't have had any access to that. But also we have a very robust system now with independent auditors. We've got governance systems which are in place to scrutinise spending. So I'm very confident in the arrangements, the governance arrangements that we've now put in place, and they're a lot more robust than they were a few years ago.
Thank you, Councillor Radford. So now going back to the people with their hands up, I'm going to go to Joan Rosalie.
Oh, hello. Hoping that everyone can hear me okay. Yeah. Brilliant. My question is related to health and a medical centre known as Everglade Medical Centre in Graham Park. I'm the chairperson of a resident association in Graham Park, as many of you are probably familiar with me. So my question is that Graham Park has been under heavy development because it was a regeneration area from 2003 when it was voted, and from 2010, I believe, when it was first implemented. The one thing that would never have been voted for was for it to lose its medical centre. It's the largest populated area, but it is actually losing its medical centre out of not just Graham Park, but out of the area. And it will be sitting in another area in Colindale. So I want to know, what measures will the council undertake to review with the North and Central London, I must get this right, the Integrated Care Board, Primary Care, to see how the local plan can be adhered to when we are talking about accessibility for health and medical care in an area, especially when it's been chosen as an area for intensified growth.
Thank you. Councillor Moore, do you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, I will indeed. And I appreciate that it's a challenging situation for you, Joan, and this goes back a long way in terms of the regeneration programme and knowing that practice would need to move as part of the regeneration process. The Everglades will transfer, as I understand it, to a newly built, purpose-built building, which is close to the Colindale Tube, and it's on a series of bus routes. But it is true that it is now about a half a mile or a 15-minute walk to the new centre. It will be large enough to take an additional practice, so that it will increase the GP practice cover locally, which reflects the size of the regeneration programme. And there has been extensive work with the council and the ICB as the commissioning body for those GP practices. But of course, it's about building that out, and that comes as the commitment to put medical centre in as part of the Colindale Area Action Plan and the Planning Commission around the regeneration. So I'm happy to talk to you offline about this, but I think the work alongside the ICB and making sure that they do deliver the GP provision that we need and in the right places is really important.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I've got Jane Airy next.
Just unmuting myself.
That's right. We can hear you, Jane. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I hope this doesn't sound a trivial concern or question. I live near the North Finchley High Road, and I'm not sure if you're aware what the parking has become like with the proliferation of scooters and delivery drivers. So, for example, last week I was looking for somewhere to park, and there were 36 scooters parked between Cafe Nero all the way down, occupying paid parking spaces. They've now started on the other side of the road, as well as occupying all the parking spaces. I would say that their driving skills are they zip in and out. So it's an accident waiting to happen. What concerned me was when I actually did find a place to park, and I was in a coffee shop, actually giving them some business. I was asked by 2 delivery drivers how long I planned to stay. And I didn't feel that I needed to justify that. They didn't really respond. And they sort of hemmed my car in with their bikes. When I spoke to a parking attendant who was coming along, his exact words were, "Nothing we can do, this is absolutely unenforceable." So presumably they are occupying those spaces throughout the day. So in terms of your revenue and your parking, you presumably are losing money. So I'm just wondering what would be a solution to this.
Councillor Snyderman, you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, and then Councillor Conway might chip in. Yeah, no, I totally understand the issue, Nikki, and you know, not to say that I have a coffee everywhere, but I do have a coffee opposite there, and indeed, you know, at Cafe Nero and other establishments.
So you will have seen it for yourself.
I have certainly seen it myself. It is, unfortunately, it is difficult to deal with, because when parking, you know, attendants will come over, then they are just able to drive away. So it is something that is tricky. I mean, we have been working with the police, so that in other parts of the borough where they've done targeted operations to check that drivers have got the right, you know, that they are insured, that they've got the right business insurance, that there aren't any other offences, etc. And that has really helped with the number of bikes, you know, that have been around to do this, particularly McDonald's in Cricklewood. So we do work with the police on things like that. But yeah, it is a problem to deal with that proliferation of bikes in the high street, and it's just a reflection of the fact that lots of people want their takeaways delivered, unfortunately. But we do continue to continue to look at that. I don't know if Councillor Conway wants to.
Yeah, I think just to add, thank you, that I was aware of the Cricklewood operation, and it's certainly something to discuss with police partners about what might be possible in other areas of the borough, because it isn't just North Finchley. I'm aware we do ward walks in every ward of the borough once a year with a mixture of councillors, different council teams, and the local police. So I'm very aware of where those issues are. And as Councillor Schneiderman said, it is something I think needs looking at, where something has been done successfully in one area to try and make that balance better for local people. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you definitely hit a nerve there by the reactions around the room and online.
I think it concerns me that your traffic attendants think it's unenforceable. So maybe they could be encouraged to have a greater presence.
Often around there, Nikki, it's just very, like I said, it's very difficult to enforce, because they will just, move off and go around the block and come back. I mean, I will discuss it again with the parking team, but like I say, we are definitely very aware of it as an issue.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Nikki now. No surname, I'm afraid.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. This is my first time attending. I have a question regarding Barnet Council and Currapatra's Currapatra developers. Having recently entered into a joint venture partnership under the name Places for Barnet, this is a limited liability partnership, and it commits council land to that partnership, which includes green spaces. The partnership commits to develop 4 connected sites, 2 in East Finchley, 1 in Mill Hill, and 1 in Colindale. The 2 in East Finchley and 1 in Mill Hill are donor sites. We've been told that that is 100% private development, and residents' questions remain unanswered due to the commercial sensitivity of the LLP arrangement. So residents across the 4 sites wish to have one meeting covering the whole connected project to try and understand the value this arrangement is bringing to the community, instead of the separate meetings that have been afforded to date, in which we do not have any council representation. Residents have been afforded an audience with Places for Barnet developer voices and not council. So the question is whether it is possible, prior to the planning applications being made, which we understand are imminent, whether there is at all a forum that council can offer that brings all of the residents across 4 of the sites, so we can ask the questions once rather than in 4 separate conversations.
Councillor Houston?
Yeah, I mean, I've already said yes to that, Nikki. It's, I mean, this is a proposal that's been around for quite a long time to take forward what we call general fund land to use to develop housing. So it's land that isn't in the council's what they call the housing revenue account, so land that has been earmarked for housing. It's the general fund land, and it's to deal with housing pressures that we have across London and in particular in Barnet. And the reason for taking 4 sites forward is basically because it can maximise the delivery of the much needed affordable housing. We've got extreme pressures on our temporary accommodation budget at the moment, and lots of homeless families who aren't able to get into council homes. So one of the mechanisms to get the maximum amount of affordable is to bring forward a mixed approach involving 4 sites. Now, those sites will go separately. Well, they will be going, some of the sites, the proposals to go to planning on them. We're still in the consultation phase. I'm more than happy to, before that happens, I'm more than happy to meet as suggested and answer questions. But there have been quite a number of meetings, including, and all those meetings have been attended by councillors and council officers. So I think as well as the partnership.
Council officers have attended those meetings, as they say, under a listening capacity only, not to address any questions. So can I just understand, there is going to be a meeting with all 4 sides?
Yeah, I'm happy we're happy to put in place a meeting. Yeah.
And how will that be communicated?
Well, we can only communicate with people who have got in touch with us about the development. So, that's, you know, so we will be in touch with you about that. I think we've got your details, so we'll definitely take that forward, and we'll invite people from the other sites to attend.
You do have my details?
My understanding is Councillor Moore is very.
We'll have your details.
Is aware that you're you know, and so yes, will have your contact details. Okay. But if not, you can email me. My email will be going in the chat.
That's great. That's great news. Yeah, thank you very much.
More than happy to do that. Absolutely, Nikki. So
thank you, Nikki. Next question is from Sarah Circus. Sarah.
Hello. Hello to the panel and everybody listening. It's just a quick question. So I live in an area where there's quite a lot of social housing managed by Barnet Homes and owned by the council. And they're old post-war properties, and they have huge gardens. And a lot of them have very large trees, which are now becoming problematic. And I'm guessing, I kind of looked into this a bit, and there's one particular tree that's causing me issues, and you know, it's been like pulling teeth to try and get somebody to deal with it. But it's not just that particular garden, it's several gardens. And these trees are going to cost a lot of money to bring down. They're too close to our properties. They're not being maintained. They're not being looked after. I understand it's not like dealing with a private landlord. He's responsible for the trees. It's the tenants that are supposed to be responsible for the trees. But as I know, tree surgery is extremely expensive. So what can you do before trees start falling on people or falling into houses or causing major structural problems?
Well, I mean, all I can do is, if we give you in the chat an email, it can be my email. We'll get a tree officer to come round and advise us and advise tenants. You won't have to pay as tenants, but
I'm not one of your tenants. It's just your tenants have really large trees in their gardens, which are problematic to the people who live the other side of the fence.
If the trees are being problematic, we can get a tree officer to look at it. It might be pollarded, it might be cutting it back, might be replacing it with smaller trees. You know, there's a variety of things, but until we get one of our tree officers to go down, I can't give a definite answer.
Okay. I thank you for that, but they've been very resistant to act. It's all, you know, it's not our problem, it's the tenant's responsibility.
I will ask them to go. I will ask them to go down, and they will.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have, and apologies if I've mispronounced your name, Legion Shang.
Yes, good evening. I'm the newish residents in the Millbrook Park, and you know there's a lot of the flat building in the council area. And we just checked, we pay very high band council tax in living in this flat. And you probably also aware there's a management company managing this area, park, and they also charge us a service charge. We asked what this for. They said this for the trees, this for the light, the road, etc. Can I ask, you know, why we being double paid these things? Because if we pay the council tax, this should be included all the payment. And what the service council provided for the residents in here, we shouldn't be double charged. If this management company charge this, you council should take the money from them to filling the council tax liability from us. We shouldn't be double charged. Thank you.
It's probably no comfort to you, but I also pay both council tax and the service charge where I live as well. It is quite a common thing. The council tax is a specific payment towards a lot of services across the whole borough. Everything from the hidden services like environmental, trading standards and so on, to the collecting of the bins and all that. The service charge, it's normally done by a private company for things like grounds maintenance, for prices on the communal areas, cost on the communal areas. Usually
is that communal area not being, should be maintained by the council as well, because we pay a very high council tax band compared to the next neighbor. I know you said you pay that. This is unfair.
The council tax band is not decided by the council. It's by the valuation of government office. So we don't have any say on what council band people put into. That's deliberately done by an outside body. On the service charges, that is often an issue that comes up, and there is hoping that the government is changing the law for private tenants that will give tenants more rights and so on. As you book in, we can probably get an email and send you some information on what are leaseholders' rights and so on. But as I say, it is a private deal with the management company. In theory, they should let you know what the service charge is for and have a breakdown. And you should have some say on who provides those services. But say the council tax is completely different. It's everything from your bins collection to making sure you're not poisoned by food you eat in a restaurant. There's a whole range of things we do as a council. I think somebody said there's 840 different services a council provides, and so that's what the council tax goes towards. Let's get you some information about possible support for looking at leaseholders and service charge.
Sorry, I have to make a comment on that. I agree, the council tax band is not decided by your guys, by the council, but it's really unfair. It's discrimination to your residents living just next road behind, on the two sides of the road. One pay the high council tax band, one pay the less, and considerably less. I know this is, you cannot do this, but you're the council, you shouldn't discriminate any residents in your council area. That's one comment. Second is, I noticed you mentioned the council tax cover other services, etc. But it would be really useful for you guys to make clear what you cover in my council tax and what others the management company collects the money for, because we don't want to double charge. We can't do this. This is, you have the authority to do this. We can't. And also you say they doing this, but all the other residents, benefit the council service. We couldn't benefit from that. We pay double, and that is really unfair. So that's my three comments. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's a good idea. We perhaps should tell people more about what the council does, because I don't think they realise the breadth of work the council does.
Thank you. We can put some information about that in the
can I get which email I should send, or you send my email to me?
They'll write that in the chat as which email you should address it to. So if you keep an eye on the chat, then the team will put something in the chat.
Which team? Sorry, there's too many teams in here. I don't know which one I should use.
That's quite.
We'll address it specifically to you, so you know. I'm going to go to Tristan now to ask a couple of questions that have been asked in the chat, and then I'll come to Mr. Dadbar.
Okay, yeah, we've had quite a few repeat questions from residents, so I'll just read out the questions from the first-time askers. First question is for you, Leader. So, and it's by way of a suggestion. Okay. Why can't residents be allowed to pay for things Barnet says it has no money for? My local park toilets have had no locks on the ladies' cubicles for several years, and the cost to fix £100. There are 5 20-year-old potholes in another local park. Cost to fix £250. So the question is, would there be any reason why residents shouldn't be allowed to pay for these things themselves?
There will be difficulties. So if somebody gets locked in, or there's the whole insurance question. I will say a public toilet on average costs £10,000 a year to maintain. It's not just the lock; it's the cleaning and so on. The best way for the residents to get involved in the Friends of the Park or whatever, and for the Friends, it's better to do it as an organisation than as an individual, because there's a whole lot of difficulties with insurance if it doesn't work. Who has the right to the keys and so on. So can I suggest, Brian, that get involved in the Friends of the Park, and we can talk to you as a group about what can be done.
Thank you, Leader. And Tristan, one more?
Yeah, one more question. This is from Steve, and it's either for you, Leader, to answer, or Councillor Begg. The question is, even though it's online and virtual, I had expected the question time to be standing room only. Our council is concerned that just 70 people in a borough of almost 400,000 residents have joined this meeting tonight.
Right. Well, this is to open it up to give more opportunities. I'd love to have more people here. And that depends a bit on how we advertise it and so on. But can I just say, what it replaced before we came into power was the Residents' Forum. The last Residents' Forum I went to, Steve, in Barnet Library, there were 6 councillors, 7 officers and 2 members of the public. For the whole of a constituency of over 100,000 people, 2 turned up. So those 70 is not enough. I think we're certainly going in the right direction of opening this up for more people.
And this is being recorded, I think, as well. So hopefully more people will watch the recording too. I hope. Spread the word.
I don't know how many people want to watch the recording, but we're giving it a go.
It's available if you choose.
It's available if people want it, yes.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Just to add on that, all councillors will have many more interactions with residents than we do at an event like tonight. We have councillor surgeries. I know ours is very busy in Cricklewood, where I represent, but also it's the emails, it's the phone calls, it's everything else, it's community events. So while this is one event, I will meet dozens of residents in any given week, and I think that's true of all councillors. And there's very different forums in which we're asked questions and different forums in which we engage with in the public. This is just one of those ways.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I've got 4 more questions, which I think will just about take us to the end of our time. So I'm going to go now to Brandon Dadvar.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me, first of all?
Yes,
fine.
All right, so I did come a little bit late, so do forgive me if my question has already been asked by someone else. It's another question about parking in the Edgware area where I live. So to be specific, it is the HA8 area, kind of on the border to Burnt Oak. And where I live, it's an area where there's no parking restrictions. And obviously there are pros to that. Everyone here likes to be able to park on their own street for free. But there have been cons, which we have noticed over the past year especially, that there is a consistency of vehicles being left on this street and neighbouring streets, left there for months and months and months on end, unattended, taking up space. And it gets to the point sometimes where it gets so congested here that people park on the pavement, which is obviously not okay. And I do recall a notice going around in the area about a proposal to extend controlled parking to make this a controlled parking zone. And I believe the council wanted to collect the thoughts of the residents of the area through an online survey, which I did fill out. I wanted to know, what is the status on this proposal?
Well, I was just trying to, hi there, Brandon. I was just trying to check as you speak. I mean, we'll happily get back to you about what the status of request is for a controlled parking zone in your area. Controlled parking zones are, always there's a difference of opinion. Like you say, there's an advantage of being able to park free of charge, but the disadvantage is if there are no controls, people can leave their vehicles there for for as long as they want, as long as they're not abandoned. But I think the best thing is there are various CPZ proposals that we're looking at for the coming year. So happy to get back to you separately and check the status of the one in HA8.
Thank you.
I will just add quickly, it would be worth it. It would be worthwhile putting an extended parking zone here. You'd make some more money, but also people here would be a lot happier being able to come back home with the peace of mind that there is a guaranteed parking spot for them.
We're always open to any suggestion to make more money. Please, if you've got any other suggestions to make more money,
and people happier.
And make people happier.
We are recording this, so we've got that on record. Okay. Ian Wood, if you don't mind, as you've asked a question already, I'm going to go down the list a bit further and then come back to you just in case we run out of time so that everyone's had a chance. So I will go now to Sybil Manel. Sybil?
Sybil needs to unmute.
Yeah, I probably caught Sybil off guard. Right. She thought I was going to Ian.
It's Sybil Manel. Good evening. I'm one of Barnet's elderly residents and I'm a pedestrian. And my main route to get to the 383 bus or Woodside Park station is to go via the footpath which runs parallel to the railway line. Now, it's really a hazardous walk. For about 2 years, the footpath was fenced off completely because in the middle of it there was a quagmire. It was more than that, it was a lake. And when it was eventually repaired, it was patched up. The worst part was tarmac, and that's very satisfactory. But the small little holes, and it's absolutely pitted with small holes, was filled with gravel. It's an obstacle course to walk along it. And I'm really, when I do walk along it, I'm terrified that I'm going to trip.
Can I just check,
is it Barnet's responsibility, and can it be resurfaced? Right,
Sybil, I just want to check which side you're coming from. To get to the bus, do you have to go through the station? So
No. I live in
You're on the car park side. You're on the car park side.
I cross Holden Road and access the footpath and walk along it that way.
Okay, I'm with you now. I've used that a few times. Yes, it is the council's right. So it is the council's responsibility. We can find out if it's in a plan, what plan there is for it. But funny enough, I'll be there tomorrow, so I'll have another look at it tomorrow and take some photos and see if I can hurry it up.
Thank you very much, because the last thing I want to do is be a burden on the NHS and end up with a broken limb.
No, quite right.
Thank you for your question, and we will look into that one further. I've got Anna, and then I'll go to Ian Wood, and then I'll go a few more questions in the chat, and then I think we will wrap up. So Anna, over to you.
Can one ask what's happening with the railway hotel? You were going to do a compulsory purchase order on it. It's a listed building.
Yeah.
And it's boarded up, it's graffitied. I think it's on its fourth, maybe its fifth attempt at a fire. What's happening with the railway hotel and the compulsory purchase order?
You're very faint, Anna, so I'll just repeat the question in case others on the call couldn't hear it. It was about the future plans for the railway hotel in Edgware, which is a listed building, and I think Councillor Houston is up to date on that issue.
Yeah, there's quite good news. Well, the railway hotel is now under new ownership, and we're in discussion with in relation to basically bringing the railway hotel back into use as part of potentially as part of a wider regeneration of the Forumside area. So I think after a long time, as you rightly say, I think there's finally some movement on that. I'm getting an update from offices, and I've asked at the request of the ward councillors as well that we all get an update so that we're on the current position with the railway hotel, and hopefully that will be going into the diary very soon. But there is positive engagement, and so it was a very difficult situation, and the council did actually go further than I think it's ever done and intervened on that site and actually went up and boarded up and took some remedial action and fixed some fences. So, because it was it was difficult to engage with the previous owner. So we did go further, and I think we were done on a site in Barnet in terms of that type of enforcement. But the good news is, I think things are looking up, and all I can say really is watch this space. But I think hopefully there will, that there'll be plans coming forward in a public forum reasonably soon. And certainly, as I say, I've got a meeting scheduled for this and with the local ward councillors in that area to update us on what's happening.
Can it be a public meeting? Because it's a deep concern to the residents of Edgware.
No, I think at this stage we just want to find out what's happening. I'm sure that the new owners will want to have public meetings about their plans, but it is not our site, and it's not really for us to arrange public meetings to discuss what an owner of a site might want to do with it. We deal with enforcement when we have to, and we did in the Railway Hotels case. But we will be working constructively with them. And what they have said is they very much recognise that the Railway Hotel, the retention of that building, is very much part of what people locally want to see and what has to happen. So they're very. So I think it is good news, and it's been long enough. I know that that site has been blighted for years.
2006.
Yeah, absolutely. So fingers crossed. But it is not land the council owns. We're very positively engaging with the new owners, and as I say, I've asked officers to arrange a meeting with the two ward councillors and myself so that we can be updated on where we are with that. But they have contacted the council, they've been in touch, they've been engaging with the council, the new owners. So I think things are moving forward.
But I mean, it's not on the land registry that it's changed owners, but it's but they advertised that they had changed owners about 9 months ago, but there's been no.
And the land registry can take a long time to update. Yeah. So terrible. I have to say that's
9 months on, the new owners have done nothing to improve its state. It just seems to have squatters.
Yeah,
I think you've made your point very eloquently, but Councillor Houston has given you an update, so I will move on if that's okay. And I've got Ian Wood next.
Hi there. I've noticed a lot of abandoned Lime bikes. I emailed Lime to inform them and asked them what they plan to do about it. They said there were penalties for those who abandon bikes, but they didn't respond to my follow-up emails for further information. Is there anything the council can do about this?
That's the final one.
Yeah, hi Ian. Yeah, no, I mean, it is a problem in different parts of the borough because Lime don't officially operate in Barnet. It's mainly those areas on where Barnet borders with other boroughs. But we have had, and I've had a meeting with Lime along with officers, and we have been talking to them about getting a dedicated email address for residents to be able to report, and also get an agreement from them that during the day they'll be removed really quickly. So we do need to follow that up because that was what they were supposed to be doing. And we're also looking at whether the possibility of dedicated days for them in those border areas where there are issues. But yeah, we're I think we do need to have another meeting with them to follow up on that. But we should be getting that dedicated email account, and then there'll be agreement to remove them within like 2 or 3 hours. So I'll follow that up here, and we'll keep you updated.
Great. How would I find out the email address when it occurs?
Well, if you subscribe to Barnet First, I suspect we're likely to put it in there.
We're putting Barnet First.
That's a very good advert for our e-newsletter. So I'll ask one of the team to put in the chat how you can sign up to Barnet First, so that everyone who is on the call can sign up, because it is a really good source of information.
Great. Thanks.
Question from Jez Sims, and then we'll pick up a couple more from the chat.
Yeah. Just very quickly, I notice it says on the screen at the back, caring for people, places, and our planet. With this in mind, can I just ask, does the council really comprehend what overdevelopment actually means?
Well, I mean, I think you mean different things to different people. we have just been through a very long process of putting together our local plan. And as part of that, there's a site allocation, 58 sites that have been identified for development. It is not easy in a city like London with the housing pressures that we have to say that we shouldn't have development. We do need to build housing. We have homeless families. We have a massively oversubscribed housing need in Barnet, where our temporary accommodation budget has gone up considerably in the last couple of years even. So it is about getting a balance between what is meeting housing need and also preserving the things that we like about Barnet. It's greenery, it's environment, it's open spaces, and also making sure that what we build has an appropriate and adequate amount of infrastructure. We need good infrastructure. And I don't think we've always got it right in the past. I think in Colindale, for example, we're putting in a brand new railway station, tube station, which is opened, and it's still got work being carried out. But that was to some extent retrofitting something that should have really been planned in when we were going ahead with that amount of residential development in that area. Barnet has taken an approach of taking certain growth areas, and this is also an approach that's reflected nationally and in the London plan, that certain areas are targeted for growth, like Edgware, Colindale, and Brent Cross Cricklewood, and that to some extent is the balance between not having massive growth in places like High Barnet and other places where actually you would not want to see that. But it is a balance, and trying to get it right is not always easy, and there are many pressures behind that. So I think the local plan has been consulted on. That is our framework for growth in the borough, and we will be coming forward with a further supplementary documentation on height and density to try and actually put further protections in. But it's something that's done at a Barnet level, a national level, and a London-wide level very much. So we can't. Planning is something, and development is something that is not something we do in isolation in Barnet.
Yeah. Can I just say, another way of looking at it is every year by we I mean we, because it's your money, your council tax money, spends tens and tens of millions of pounds putting people up in temporary accommodation because there's not enough houses in Barnet. So that is the balance that actually you're paying for there not being enough houses. I know you're talking about overdevelopment. I think getting development right is a very difficult balance, but it is a balance. One thing is that of affordability. So I'll give you just one quick example. We are building in the administration, so in these 4 years, 1,000 new council houses. Every week, 10 more families are added to our housing list, if you like. Those 10 are 500 a year. So over the 4 years, we might build 1,000 houses, but 2,000 families have been added to our housing list. It's trying to fight that tide. To do that, we need development. But it is a difficult choice. And to me, the thing is, we need development, but it needs to be better quality development. And it's about quality. We need the quantity, but we shouldn't give up on the quality of what's being provided.
Just if I can just add one final thing, I think that picking up on very much what the leader said, one of the changes we made to the local plan was to put up a higher threshold for affordable housing. I put in a lot more environmental, and part of this was national as well. We were able to adopt more environmental safeguards in relation to net zero and everything else. And the other thing that we introduced, which I think is very much about answering the type of development, was we introduced a quality review panel, and that's a panel that on all larger developments it's a panel of kind of experts, architects and people who are experts on environmental aspects of design, to comment on planning applications in the borough and to give a critique, if you like, of planning applications to inform our planning committee and our planning officers when they make decisions about giving consent. And I think that's a really good, useful tool to make sure that what we're building is actually of a good quality.
Thank you, Councillor Houston. Right, Tristan, I think we've probably got time for one or possibly two questions if they're quick ones. So.
Okay, so The first question is on street scene for you, Councillor Schneiderman. This is from Famaz Khan, who asks, I want to ask whether there's been any change in street cleaning provision or frequency. We've noticed a stark increase in litter, generally in Barnet, but particularly around Maze Lane and Barnet Lane and connecting streets, particularly in the last year or so.
We have been looking at some frequencies, but we want to take a more, intelligence-led approach and try and focus more resources where there is a problem. So I'll certainly follow up on Maze Lane in that location, and we'll have a look. 'Cause there are areas change, so from time to time, some areas need a bit more attention than others. But I'll speak to officers, and we'll have a look at that particular area and see if there's a problem and if extra cleaning is needed there.
Okay, and one more question again from a first-time asker. It's actually a request for an update. So Oscar Hemek asks, is there any information or an update about the footpath behind North London Grammar School connecting Colindale Gardens?
I don't think, not like, we'll have to take that away. We got your email from you coming on here. We're getting an answer for you and send it directly to you.
I mean, there is a programme in Colindale to look at footpaths and improvements, but obviously it will happen, and I don't know whether this one is part of that. But there is definitely a programme which is,
Marine's just put it in the chat. If you're looking at the chat, if you put that question into Barnet question time at barnet.gov.uk, we get you a direct answer.
Okay, probably can do one more very quickly, as we know the answer to that one.
Sorry, bear with me. So we have a question from Brandon Dadvar. Has anyone asked about the proposed development in Edgware by Ballymore? If not, may I ask what the status is with this? I'd also like to remind the council that Edgware's residents remain strongly opposed to it. Councillor Houston.
Yep, it's my understanding wise it's going to go to planning committee, and planning committee will have to look at all the aspects of the proposals and also take account of all the submissions that residents and others have put in. There is a planning framework for Edgware which was set I think decades ago when it was identified as a town centre in the London plan under Mayor Johnson. I think it goes back to for growth, and the previous administration put together put in place a Edgware supplementary planning document which outlined the housing targets and some of the parameters that are form part of the current planning framework. It is an area that is in the local plan for growth. The planning committee will have to look in detail at the proposals in front of them, and they'll have to make come to a view on that in relation to the planning policies that are in place in Edgware. But certainly it's important that people have put their comments in, and as always, I think with our planning comments, it's never too late to put comments in. They will be considered, and I'm sure the planning committee will look at all the aspects of this in great detail.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Houston, and thank you everyone. Particularly thanks to those of you that joined from the public for giving up your time and taking part tonight. We are planning more of these sessions, both online and in person. So if you've got any specific suggestions on how we can improve the events, please do post ideas in the chat. And apologies to anyone whose question in the chat we didn't get to. Please do email your questions to barnetquestiontime@barnet.gov.uk, and then we'll be able to direct them to the right councillor and reply to you. And the address has been posted in the chat a few times, but I'm sure we can put it in again. We have recorded the event this evening, and it will take us a little while to put the subtitles on, but once we've added those subtitles, we'll post it on the chat, and we'll post it on the internet, and then we will share the link in this chat and through our Barnet First e-newsletter, which we've already encouraged you to sign up to. So thank you all for your participation this evening, and we will see you again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.